Buongiorno everyone, I'm Ariel with Urbanist, and we are in the Eternal City, one of the most beautiful cities in the entire world, where history is literally at every single corner, more than 2,000 years old. Now, in front of us is a building that we see in the similar style all around the Western world, including the New York City Supreme Court building, the Jefferson Memorial, many buildings in London and Paris, but of course, this is the original, dating back to 125 AD. This is known currently as Santa Maria de la Rotonda, but a lot of people know it as the Pantheon. Now, on top, we see a name that says Marcus Agrippa. M stands for Marcus and Agrippa. Marcus Agrippa was one of the closest confidants, the second-hand man for Augustus, the very first emperor of Rome. However, Agrippa did not build the Pantheon. He built the first version of the Pantheon, which was much different and much smaller. The man who built this building was Hadrian. And yes, you could say he built it because he was an amateur architect. And he designed the preliminary schematics for the Pantheon. Pantheon means pan, which means across or overall, and theos, means God or gods. This is the temple to all the Roman gods. Let's take a look inside. Now, these columns that we see over here are actually one entire piece, all of them brought from Egypt. Let's walk inside. So right here we are entering the Pantheon, and these are huge, massive columns brought in a single piece from Egypt. And looking from this perspective, it seems so massive. Now, Hadrian was a lover of architecture, so much so that in the villa that he built in Tivoli, nearby Rome, at that time it was much farther away, it had a collection of different types of buildings he saw during his travels. And he fell so much in love that he started building massive structures all around Rome and in his villa grounds. The most famous structure is this one, including Hadrian's doors, which are some of the largest doors made out of iron from the ancient world, still standing here from 125 AD. Prepare yourself as we walk right inside in 360 video, where you can see every single angle. It's a huge door. Wow. It's not pure iron, it seems to be wood underneath. So as we walk inside, we can see, even in 360, that you can capture the entire Pantheon within your field of view, within the natural field of view of our human eyes. This is human-sized architecture, as opposed to the monumental-sized architecture of Victor Emmanuel Monument, or many of the buildings constructed after the 1900s, from the skyscrapers in New York City to the huge Soviet monoliths that were built all around Eastern Europe. This makes you feel connected with the architecture. You don't feel small, you feel large. You feel almost as you're rising above the whole of the Pantheon into the heavens. Now, this is the coolest part about the building. Let's take a look all the way up. I'm going to put this selfie to maximum. Brace yourselves. You're about to go to 9 feet tall. Now, inside this structure, you can fit a perfect sphere, which is really interesting because most buildings are kind of round, and they're more 2D in terms of their geometry. You could fit like a square, you could fit like a circle on the floor, but there's usually edges around it that would prevent it from filling up a perfect 3D geometric shape. But the fact that you could fit an entire sphere within the confines of this Pantheon and fill up almost the entire space is really interesting. It kind of adds to this feeling of divinity that you get walking inside here. It truly is of the gods. And then later on became of the Virgin Mary. Now the diameter of the Pantheon is the largest dome by diameter in all of Rome, amongst one of the largest domes by diameter in the entire world, and the largest unreinforced dome in the entire world. Unreinforced? Why? Because most domes are built with some type of wooden and steel architecture. Definitely the newer ones built in the past century. But the ones built before them, like the St. Peter's Basilica, are reinforced by buttresses or by other framing systems. Here, nope. It's just pure concrete. And on the other side of the concrete, there's nothing. Just air, wind, the elements. How do they do it? Well, they use 3 different types of concrete, from heavier all the way to the lightest up above, which is made out of basalt. Now, basalt is volcanic rock that comes from the area of Mount Vesuvius. Just absolutely magnificent structure. There's a lot of circles and squares all around the floor, all around what we see in the structure itself, circles and squares. Now, there's one very interesting math problem that scratched the heads of mathematicians and physicists for centuries until it was solved just a mere few decades ago. And that was how to square a circle, which is impossible to do so via hand. You would need a computer in order to square a circle, which means how do you get the dimensions of a square to be the same dimensions as a circle? How can you get a square to look like a circle? It's a very complicated math problem, but every time I see a circle within a square, I think about that. Here's the Basilica of Santa Maria at Martyrs. Forgive my Italian pronunciation. Now, why is it still standing when a lot of Roman structures from 100 AD are in ruins or deep underground, built above it? Well, 2 reasons. Why? One, this is the lowest point in Rome. So it was not so easy to build above it because it will constantly get flooded. And in order to have these grounds constantly be flooded, you would have very muddy territory. So they never bothered kind of building above it. But the second main reason is this was adopted by the Roman Catholic Church shortly after Roman Catholicism took over Europe and took over Rome. They decided to devote this temple, turn it into a church and devote it to the Virgin Mary, who's held in very high esteem in the Roman Catholic religion as opposed to the Protestant religion or the Eastern Orthodox. And that's why it survived to this day. If it didn't become Catholic, it would probably be destroyed. But it's absolutely magnificent that it's still standing to this day and without any additional reinforcements. While there are other structures that are only 200 years old, like the Brooklyn Bridge, that constantly needs reinforcement built around it. This one, not at all. Hadrian did such a great job. Now, Hadrian was known as one of the 5 good emperors of Rome because he had a relative era of peace. There was very few wars under his name, and also he built many public works for the people under his rule. But Hadrian was also a very complicated man because he ended up marrying a young teenage boy named Antonius. And Antonius ended up becoming the love of Hadrian's life. So much so that when he mysteriously died as they were on a trip through the Nile, Hadrian mourned more than any other person has ever mourned before, at least according to the Romans at that time. They said that he was an absolute wreck after the death of Antonius. And Hadrian, missing his long-lost lover, ended up building temples under his name, basically deifying Antonius, making him one of the Roman gods in this pantheon. Let's take a closer look at the floor. Beautiful tile work as well. Not 100% sure if it's original, though I would say the majority is. Most of everything here is original, aside from the extra murals and tombs that they built in the past few centuries. Now, the coffers up there are actually one of the reasons why the structure itself remains intact and doesn't collapse over our heads right now. They used to be gilded with ornamentation, but that was removed when the Catholic Church took over. Very interesting thing about this building is that it's like rectangular in the front. And it looks like almost every other Roman Forum building. Looks like the Supreme Court in the U.S. as well. Looks like a lot of governmental buildings that we have nowadays. But once you walk inside, that's when you truly realize that it's something different. That's one of the interesting things about this. It's kind of an illusion. You think it's one building from the outside, and then you're greeted to a very different building in the inside that completely envelops you. It doesn't make you feel small, but as I mentioned, it makes you feel big. It makes you feel connected to kind of an unearthly realm. If you're watching this a month before it's released publicly, thank you so much for lending your support to Urbanist. We have so many wonderful supporters that are helping this channel grow and thrive so I can show you more beautiful places like the Pantheon. Or if you're watching this afterwards, thank you so much for watching, commenting, and liking. Keep being awesome and always keep on exploring. Arrivederci, everyone.